University is the best opportunity in your entire life to start an online business, to take a risk, to take a chance, and to try and level up your life. My name is Rudy, and I spent 6 years at a university in Australia studying law and studying advertising. I left university with 2 degrees. Currently, I use neither of those degrees. My qualifications haven't helped me get to where I am today. I run an online consulting business working with law firms all across the world. I have a community of 1,000+ law firm owners who buy my education, buy my courses, and license my systems. And I have a book that became a bestseller within 2 weeks. Now, how did I achieve all of this, and what has university got to do with any of this? University was a very transformational time for me. And I think particularly after my first year, when I learned to game the system a little bit, I learned to get as far as possible without doing as much work as everyone else. I started to spend my time, especially on campus, thinking about what I was doing in this environment and how I would maximize my growth over the next 5 to 6 years. I started looking around me and observing how people behaved. I noticed that especially with my law cohort, there were so many students that cared a lot about their academics. There were other students that just wanted to party on the weekends, join societies, join clubs, make friends. And while all of that was great, I never quite felt like I fit in. I didn't really want to do the best academically. I just wanted to get the best possible outcome by doing the least amount of work required. And I had absolutely no interest in partying, in joining societies, in doing these social events. So I would often think to myself, what am I doing here? How can I maximize my time here? And where am I actually heading after university? One of the initial and biggest realizations that I had was that academic-minded students who are able to do well in primary school and then in high school, are often the ones that funnel straight into the university system and do the exact same thing. You're learning a set curriculum, majority of the content you're memorizing, and you're mostly just focused on doing well within that institution. So if you're in high school, you want to end up with a good mark so that you can get into university. When you move to university, you want to make sure that you have a good average so that you can get a nice high-paying corporate role. But the one key question I asked myself was, where does this end? For these academic types, where do they go after university and after landing that high-paid corporate job? I looked around me and I really thought about it for a long time. I mean, there's so many pros to having a secure corporate job. You get paid a 6-figure salary, you have security. The work culture in a place like Australia is actually pretty chill. So after 6, 7 o'clock latest, you get to relax, go home, and switch off. But how many years is that sustainable for? I put my present self in my future self's shoes and thought about me living out this life. Up until about first or second year of university, I had convinced myself that I wanted to be a lawyer. But when I started to ask myself, why do I actually want to be a lawyer? This worldview that I had built up started to basically break down and shatter. I realized that I was always looking for some sort of an ego blanket in these institutions. When I was in high school, I attended a selective academic school. If you're not from Australia, basically a selective school is a school where they hold high academic standards, and typically everyone around you is doing very well. So every time I would tell people which school I was from, I would get this warm feeling that I'm on the right path, I'm on the right track, I'm in a good school. Once year 12 came along, I repeated the same behavior and just set my focus and intention on getting into law school so that I could look at everyone and say, well, look, I'm in law school, I'm in university, I'm doing really well for myself. I have nothing to worry about. It was this blanket for my ego that I constantly was wrapped inside of. And I think university was the place where that blanket started to come off. I started to really think about what life would be like when it was just me that was experiencing and living and dealing with all of the hardships. If I took away my family, if I took away my girlfriend, if I took away the friends that I had in high school and university, would I be able to be content with myself and where I was in life? And the answer to that was no. Let me tell you a bit of a story as to when everything started to change for me. And I hope that you can find something in this story that resonates with you and inspires you to make a change. When I was in the second or third year of university, my cousin sent me a message and said, look, I know it's really hard for law students to get jobs at the moment and to break into the legal industry. I've got a friend who is currently at KPMG. Now, if you don't know, KPMG is one of the biggest consulting firms in the world, and their team is looking for a paralegal. I've given him your details and he's going to call you today. So immediately I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity. I'm not doing the best academically, but I was basically sitting up close to a distinction average. And I thought this could be the perfect opportunity for me to land a really, really good job and set myself on the right path as I enter the workforce. One of the things that I was very, very good at doing from a very young age is being able to communicate well, especially in situations where I didn't have all the necessary knowledge. I went into this interview and I was very calm, I was quite charismatic, and I was able to be very honest about the answers that I had and the answers that I didn't have. Ultimately, I landed the job and began working as a paralegal at KPMG. To this day, I remember the comments that I would get from parents, from family friends, from students at university, all telling me what great work I'd done by landing a job at KPMG as one of the youngest paralegals. I even had other students reaching out to me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, asking me what I did to land the role. The honest truth was that I got very lucky to get the opportunity, and it was my intangible skills, not even my academics, that actually allowed me to land and secure that role. But again, the ego blanket came out and I felt warm. Every time I would go into the office, I didn't even care or think about the work that I was doing and the time and energy. And this is one thing I want to point out. It's not just time, it's your energy, it's your thoughts, it's everything that makes you who you are, that you're sinking 9 hours a day into. I was just on cruise control, super content, thinking that my next job is to graduate with my law degree and become a lawyer and probably end right back up at one of these consulting firms or at a big law firm and climb the ladder for the rest of my life. This went on for about 8 to 9 months. And as I was approaching 1 year, we started hearing rumblings around the office of things starting to change and certain job cuts potentially being made. Now, I remember talking to the other paralegals I was working with, and everyone was absolutely terrified. But I remember feeling almost slightly relieved. When I sat with that feeling for a while, I realized I need a change. I need to do something drastically different. So before it even got to a point where I'd be laid off or asked to work less hours, I messaged my manager and said, look, I'm going to quit and I'm going to look for a totally different role because I've got about 4 years left of university. And before I get to a point where I'm going to be a lawyer, I know that I want to try experience something completely different in the workforce, maybe something in sales, maybe something in marketing before I commit myself to being a lawyer. And that was the single best decision I made. Now, fast forwarding, I worked at a recruitment company for a few months. Working at that recruitment company, I saw a small team of about 7 to 10 people absolutely crush it. They were all making much, much better money than the lawyers that they were actually recruiting and hiring. And the culture was so much better. The work was more enjoyable. And I was actually pushing myself for the first time ever in a sales environment. My face used to go literally red when I would do these sales calls, but I had to do it. I had to do the reps. I also got to see behind the scenes of a small business. And it became very, very clear to me while I was working at that recruitment firm that there was an alternative path. Someone at some point had started this company from zero and scaled it to the point that he had scaled it to. He didn't go down the corporate path. He made a deliberate decision to go and start his own business. And that is when the bug infected me. Now, when I think about it in hindsight, I feel like it was always there, that entrepreneurial spirit that lives inside a lot of us. But it always takes one major catalyst to really bring that out of you. And for me, that was it. So I only lasted at this company for about 2 to 3 months before I decided, you know what? Let me really think about the skills that I have that I can already and immediately take into the market. I quit this job just after a couple of months and I said, I'm going to start a company that helps law firms get more clients. Now, how did I arrive to this really, really niche business? Unlike a lot of people today, I didn't come across any social media marketing agency courses, gurus, YouTube channels, nothing like that. All I did was think about the skills that I had and the industry that I'd spent all my time in thus far. So the skills that I had was in communication, in advertising, in marketing, in creative thinking, in strategy. And the academic industry that I was in was the legal industry. Now, I thought long and hard, and I realized that I could help any industry or any business with marketing, with strategy, with creative work. But then I thought, why would I leave all of this experience that I've built in the legal industry and the little bit of knowledge that I've gained while actually working in the legal industry? Why would I just throw that in the bin? I have that, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. So that's exactly what I did. I went out and started a marketing agency for law firm owners. That was the inception of my entrepreneurial journey. For the first few months, I challenged myself and did absolutely everything I could to land my first clients. After about 2 months of learning about websites, leads, ads, media buying, all of these things that I'd never ever heard before, I landed my first client from a cold call. Immediately after landing that first client, I actually signed my second client within the same day. I remember the emotion in the house. I was screaming. I was elated with joy. I ran to my mom. I ran to my dad. I told them, look, like it's worked. I've got my first client. I told you that this would work. When I think back to that day, it's so crazy to me because I knew nothing about the service I was selling. I was almost delusional in what I was doing, and I charged obscenely low prices to both of these clients. Now, the story gets worse because one of those clients ended up being incredibly abusive and put me through hell for about 2 to 3 months. And at the end of it, I walked away with less than $1,000 in profit. But I remember at that really, really low point thinking that at least I'm in control of what I'm doing. When I actually fired that client, it was one of the most freeing experiences in my life. It was like I lifted a boulder off my shoulders. I also remember thinking, had I been let off at KPMG and had someone fired me, I would have had no control, zero control over that situation. But at least I've had control, and at least I've been able to deal with this adversity completely on my own terms. And that to me was exceptionally free. Now, what happened over the next couple of years? I came to learn more about this business model that I was already in and that I had absolutely no idea about. I started running ads to generate leads for my own practice. I learned sales. I built out a small team, and I started to turn over a profit, which was an absolute game changer for me. It made me realize that online business is a very, very real thing. Despite how saturated this whole niche has become with gurus, with content creators, with course sellers, it is still very real. But the reality is, you can't just go and start an online business like dropshipping or an agency if there's no personal element to it. My personal element was that I used my skills and my academic advantage, and I turned it into an online business that actually made sense for me. I think that the biggest mistake that so many young people make these days is they just want to make money online and there's no purpose, there's no meaning, there's nothing behind it, which is why it fizzles out and it never ever works. And then they go and push that blame and that onus onto the content creators, the course sellers, etc., etc. Whereas you should always remember that you are the driving force behind your career, behind what successes and what failures that you have in your life. When you start thinking that way and you take personal accountability from day one, you will always succeed. And that's a guarantee that I can make to you. Now, over time, I began to refine my service. I gathered testimonials. I learned how to advertise my business. I built up so much authority in my niche, and I was able to effectively design a life where I'm able to travel. I'm able to work in a really amazing office environment with my closest friends. I get to do cool things like make content on a random Tuesday. And because I love traveling so much, it actually inspired me to start working with law firms and clients that are all over the world. There's literally no limit to it. It's just the most amazing thing ever. Last year alone, I did about 4 to 5 trips just to the Middle East itself. I traveled Asia, I traveled Europe. It's just by far the best decision that I've ever made. Now, if you're someone in university, What are the first steps that you can take to start living this type of a life? And what are the first steps you can make to actually start deprogramming your mind so that you can actually create a business and lifestyle that you actually want and not one that has literally been placed upon you? My simplest advice is start. Start now. The best time to start was probably 1 to 2 years ago, but the second best time to start is today. Just make a start. Take a very, very small step in the direction of doing your own thing, starting your own business, and see where it takes you. The funny thing about doing this is that you don't need all of the answers to start. You just need to take one step in the right direction and see what happens. There is no shortage of free education online. There is no shortage of paid education online. There's mentors absolutely everywhere online. Once you have an idea about what your skill set is and what your advantage is, just start. Reach out to a client and pitch them your service. Maybe you want to provide them advertising. Maybe you want to provide them AI consulting. Maybe you want to provide them education. Whatever it may be, pick your service, pick the industry you want to go in, and just start. The next best thing you can do is to find a mentor. I strongly want to emphasize this point. At the time, I was so obsessed that I went onto LinkedIn and I literally found people that were doing exceptionally well in the legal industry that went off into other careers. I found someone who was running one of the biggest supplements companies in Australia who used to be a lawyer. I found someone else who was running a consulting business for law firms. I mean, the company that I was in was a recruitment and HR company for law firms. So I found all of these people, and I had actually several mentors over the last couple of years, and they all actually gave me the time of day because I wasn't reaching out to a celebrity or an online guru who had 200, 300,000 followers. I was reaching out to people that were in my city, people that I flattered and complimented and told them that I wanted to replicate their success, which is why they afforded me the time of day to actually teach me how they got to where they are. If you do those two things, you make a start, you take a risk, and you find a mentor, someone who can hold you accountable and someone who can prove to you it's possible, the deprogramming of your mind will begin. You will actually start to see that this reality, this whole universe can open up to you when you start taking control of your life and actually set off on a path that you chose, not one that was laid out for you.